What's up, everybody? Anthony Sevens back again for another movie review. Today we're going to be talking about the 2022 Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Let's rock and roll.
Ignition sequence starts. 6,
All right, so the 2022 Texas Chainsaw Massacre is another one of these films that takes place, 40 something years later, 50 years later, after the very, very original 1970s version of the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Now, there's been sequels and reboots and all kinds of crazy shit going on with this movie, and origin stories, so on and so forth. Over the past so many decades. So my first initial reaction to another Texas Chainsaw Massacre was like, what the fuck, another one? Like, how many Leatherface stories are they gonna tell? I mean, my initial reaction to the mere announcement of this movie, and even to seeing the trailer, I thought, like, this looks like shit. Like, I don't want to watch this movie. Like, whatever. But, finding out that it's actually a direct sequel from the very first original version, where Sally, who survived the first movie, she comes back, blah, blah, blah. And the way that they made the trailer look, they made it look like, oh, it's another Laurie Strode versus Michael Myers type of film. And they're just kind of riding on that ploy right now. And be it that I was highly, highly disappointed with the Halloween Kills movie, I just thought, like, this is just going to be a piece of shit. I mean, that was my initial reaction. I did not want another Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Leatherface is not my all-time favorite, iconic horror villain of all time. I absolutely loved the original. Didn't care for its sequels. And as far as the remakes were concerned, the first Texas Chainsaw Massacre remake, I enjoyed that. I can admit I enjoyed that. It was cool for what it was, but it was just a retelling of the same story, and I thought that it really took away from the realism of that first movie. It's just like, all they did was remake a movie with different people in more modern day filming style. So with this movie, it comes out on Netflix. And I start reading some of the reviews that people are leaving. Like, oh, wow, this was surprisingly good. I enjoyed it. It was cool for what it was. And then the other side of the fence, I mean, this is really a movie that you love it or you absolutely hate it type of film. But just seeing the fact that a few people said, this is really good, I would go check it out. And, I thought, okay, it's an hour and 20-something minutes of my life. I have some time to spare. I'm going to watch it, even if I absolutely hate it, just for the fact to say that I've seen it, and if I do hate it, that I have something plausible to argue with. That was my attitude going in. So, sit there and I watch the movie. Now, spoiler alert to those who have not seen it and don't want any spoilers at all. I would suggest just stopping this, go watch the film, and come back to this at a later time if you want. So I'm sitting there watching this movie, and it's the story about how in Harlow, you got the run-down town, and these kids are trying to kind of revive this town. They're taking their own personal businesses. These college kids are graduate college kids, and they're buying out this little town to kind of start a new life, kind of like creating a modern day community in an old rundown town. It's like, okay, that's kind of cool and different. I dig that. But and then they have the one guy who works at the mechanic shop, and it turns out that the little orphanage of this town, the lady is still there, and that this is the place where Leatherface has been hiding out this whole entire time. Now, whether she's taking care of him, he's taking care of her, they're taking care of each other, whatever the case may be, but this is where Leatherface is hiding out. And I thought, okay, that's different. Leatherface is hiding out in this like totally secluded town away from everybody. And then, the lady dies. Leatherface kind of snaps and loses his mind and goes back to the town and winds up killing all of these fucking people. Now, in the meantime, Sally, because of her incident in the very first movie, she was traumatized, and I like how she became part of the police force of the town. And so, because she knew that, okay, Leatherface did survive, she escaped him, so she's going to take her pain and her trauma, and she's going to do something with it. Now, whether Leatherface was still alive or not, I guess she kind of didn't care. It was just the fact of she became part of the police force to help other kids so shit like that wouldn't happen to other people, and to strengthen herself in case something like this ever happened again. And it's like, I'm thinking to myself, okay, well, that's a realistic move. I can see someone going through that kind of trauma and then wanting to join the police force, because knowing that kind of sinister evil is out there in the world, again, taking the pain and taking all of that shit that she went through and turning it into a strength of sorts. I'm like, that's kind of realistic, I guess. I mean, you can either, one of two ways. I mean, either someone who lives through that, they're going to commit suicide, or they're going to become a fucking crazy-ass recluse like Laurie Strode. She didn't become a police officer. She was in hiding and prepping like Sarah Connor for this big war against Michael Myers. And, then you've got Sally, who decided to become a police officer. And it's like, okay, cool. That takes the story, in a little bit different direction. So now, she catches wind that Leatherface is still around. Like, she was waiting for a sign, and the sign was the dude at the gas station contacted her, so on and so forth. And I love that they didn't make a huge ordeal about that. It was pretty much, she was doing her thing, living her life. She got this call, and then she knew where to go, and then it just set off this whole chain of events. I've heard so many people talk so much mad shit about this movie, like, oh, this movie sucked, or it was too slow and it was too boring, or, well, the gore was there, but everything else just sucked and it was stupid. What did you expect? It's Leatherface. Leatherface is not some overhyped supernatural being like, say, Michael Myers. It's you got to remember, this is supposed to be based on a true-to-life kind of story, to where Leatherface, you're dealing with a human being, a normal human being who's just really fucked up in the head, which would make him not normal, obviously. But it's like, you're dealing with a human being who's just like kind of sick in the head. You're not dealing with anyone with supernatural powers. You're not dealing with anyone who necessarily needs to keep dying and then coming back and then dying and coming back. This is like the story of, there was a serial killer in the 1970s who lived through however many decades, and he became an elderly man. So Leatherface technically is this elderly dude in this film, just like Sally is. They're old people. But he just so happened to find a way to survive through all of these years. Now, he doesn't have any superpowers. There's nothing super special about this guy. He's just fucked up, right? Normal human being type of stuff. Like, he's just a man. And, and these kids were pretty much invading his space and invading his territory. And that's how he saw it. And especially with the caretaker dying, it's kind of what made him snap and kind of was like, fuck this, I'm going to go kill all these people. As mass murdering serial killer psychopaths usually do. So anyways, Leatherface goes back into town. He's killing all these kids one by one. I mean, he was just picking them off left and right. There was not a lot of, there wasn't too much suspense. And I like that because it wasn't about Leatherface trying to be creepy or sneaky or spooky. It was just about he wanted to get back to town, kill these fucking kids, and kind of get back to his like hermit-like life. And then, of course, Sally shows up at the end, and just when you think it's about to be this showdown, she gives the Laurie Strode speech like, I've been waiting for this for like however many decades, and it's like cool. But then a little bit of a fight, some gunshots go off, and Leatherface just kills her, just impales her with the chainsaw. And I'm thinking like, this is fantastic. I love, it's not like some dragged out 2.5 hour long title bout, over dramatic Hollywood type of bullshit. It was really, this guy is on a killing spree because people are invading his territory, and that was that. You had the two girls, the sisters, that towards the end of the movie, they kind of were playing it like they were going to be, the leading ladies, the surviving heroes. But all in all, Leatherface wound up just winning in the end because he's just a force not to be reckoned with. He's a big, giant fucking dude. And he, all these little people were pitted up against him. And just by nature, he overpowered everybody. And he killed everybody. And it was just like, that was it. The end. There was, here's Leatherface as an old man. Here's people invading his territory. He's really fucking pissed off, wants to be left alone, and he fucking killed everybody. And I thought that the kills were great. The kills were good. I love that the hero of the story was pretty much Leatherface, because he was just simply such a big dude that nobody could overpower him. And, a couple of gunshots, a couple of gunshot wounds, and, a slice to his chin with the chainsaw. I mean, he was, injured, I'm sure, but hit with the adrenaline and his mass size. I mean, it was just like, wow, this is really cool. And it held that, I guess, I don't want to say it was like realistic, but it was more so true to life, because of the fact that there was no creeping around. That it wasn't supposed to be some eerie, look out, he's hiding behind all these walls and shit, like, you know what I'm saying? It was Leatherface doing his thing because he's just this crazy fucking person. And like one scene in particular that I really loved was when he was hiding behind the wall, and the girl under the bed logically knew, let's tilt the mirror so the one guy can see so that he's not surprise attacked. And, it was little things like that, little nuances like that I was like, okay, this is a little bit more realistic. Even things like when she was running from Leatherface and trying to creep out of the house, instead of walking down the stairs all slow, I liked how she hopped over the railing. And you're thinking, like, if I was in that situation, I probably would make a beeline for the door too. I wouldn't worry about stepping on the stairs. I'd probably climb over the railing and try to be smooth and quiet. And it was awesome. And I like the fact that there wasn't tons of Hollywood scripted dialogue in this film. It was to the point. It was really quick, a little over an hour long. And in the end, Leatherface goes home. That was the after credits scene where you see Leatherface walking back to his old home. And it's like, he went back home. The end. That's it. No survivors, no bullshit, no survivors, no big dragged out Hollywood drama, and the end. And by the time the credits were rolling, I really thought that this movie that I desperately wanted to hate so badly, I was just like, this was fucking incredible. It was great. It was short. It got the job done. And it was like, this is how a sequel to this kind of movie in particular should end. That's it. The end. Leatherface goes home. The psychopath won. He probably went home to die, just of natural causes. This elderly, old, psychotic person. And there really doesn't need to be anything else to it. I think that a lot of people, hated it just because of the short run time. I think a lot of people hated it because there was no big Hollywood rock'em sock'em title bout. I think people hated it because Leatherface won. And I think people hated it because, we're used to seeing Leatherface and his whole family of freaks and Grandpa and all these other different people. And I liked that it was a very secluded film. This was Leatherface's film right here, and it wasn't that long. And if you have an hour and 20 something minutes to spare of your life, give it a check out. I mean, and I'm not going to sit here and say like, I'm right, it was an awesome, amazing movie. Maybe you'll hate it. But for someone, this is me, who I'm not a huge fan of Leatherface to begin with, and I only really loved one of all of the other Texas Chainsaw Massacres. So I have to honestly say that very, very first film in the 1970s and this film are the only two that I truly love, that I would watch over and over and over again. So I'm not some diehard fan trying to defend this movie and the franchise. I'm not at all whatsoever. But anyways, that's all I got for you. And, if I have to give this movie 1 out of 10, I thoroughly, really loved it, and I thought it was brilliant. And so I'm gonna give Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2022 a 9 out of 10. Super high score, because it was absolutely satisfying to someone who's not a die-hard Leatherface fan. And I thought it was really awesome. It was cool. It was to the point. It was short, sweet, simple. Stayed away from the Hollywood bullshit of it all. And I'd be totally willing to watch it again. And I recommend at least seeing it, whether you love it or hate it. That's all I got for you. This is Anthony Seven signing off. Till we meet again, take care of yourself, take care of each other.